To this now, Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Minister Velenkosini Hlabisa has officially proclaimed November 4th this year as the date of the municipal polls, marking the start of the 90-day countdown that triggers the closure of the voters' roll at midnight. Let's speak now to Keamogetswe Seipato from Democracy from Below Project Lead My Vote Counts. Good evening to you, Keamogetswe, and thank you so much for joining us here on the show. Perhaps we start with your assessment of the voter registration rollout and whether in your view, it was a success.
Thanks for having me tonight, Bongiwe. I think it was an extreme success. I mean, when you've heard today the IEC mentioning that about, I think if I'm not mistaken, there's been a huge jump in new voters who have registered. So we're kind of really seeing that many South Africans are interested in making sure that they participate during the elections and make their voices count.
So when it comes then to, for example, the biggest challenges, especially when you look at the work of the IEC, right, as it prepares to deliver this election, credibility is quite the big issue. So what are some of the challenges that you are seeing from your end?
I think for me personally, one of the biggest challenges that the IEC is going to be facing is potentially some forms of political violence that might disturb some of the activities on voting day or even leading up to voting day. I mean, we just recently saw an ANC councillor who has been shot dead in eThekwini. And I mean, there's been several instances also of some councillors or some potential representatives who've been running who have been also killed, for instance, in the first round of the voter registration drive. I also think one of the second challenges possibly that the IEC is going to be facing, which was also covered, I think, this afternoon in some of the news, is the point around misinformation or also disinformation on social media platforms or other particular media platforms. And I think it would be quite important for the IEC to watch out for that. And then for me, thirdly, would be something that happened, of course, in the general election around the use of the DMVs. So it'd be very important for the IEC to really ensure that the devices that we're using on election day are working. And also, I think most importantly, safety and security come first. And I really also think a lot of the burdens and challenges that the IEC is facing is either because of political parties or because of citizens who are naughty.
And when you speak about citizens who are naughty, tell us more, because it sounds like there's something there. What's happening?
No, sometimes during an election day when particular people are standing in lines to vote, there are some agitators sometimes who come out. And, sometimes some communities decide to protest on the day of elections rather to take part in elections. You know what I mean? So that's what I mean about citizens being naughty.
And the IEC are putting a lot of focus, Keamogetswe, on, particularly to young people. And I wonder, from where you're sitting, right, what kind of role are they likely to play, particularly in these elections? And also, what then would influence their participation, given some of what you've mentioned?
I think, Bongiwe, to be very honest with you, the role that young people play is actually the fact that we're the majority, those, of course, who are eligible to vote and those who are registered to vote. I think an interesting thing that young people might significantly play in relation to these elections is how things pan out. I think when you looked at the general elections in 2024, some of the things that really came up is that young people felt like they were not represented at all. So it'd be interesting to see at local government level, considering the fact that there's about now I think 4.1 million people who have registered to vote, to see how young people show up and start kind of changing the way things look like at a local level. It'd also be exciting to see potentially how young people start taking part in small clusters like the ward committee, sitting there and helping make particular decisions in relation to local government.
So when we then, look at young people and of course in the majority, right, what then becomes the key issues for them that you believe will shape, their decisions, especially in the lead up to election day?
I think first and foremost, outside of some of the things that we know, is of course clear cut representation, feeling and seeing that political leaders are actually speaking to young people and are actually considering issues that young people are focused on. And the issues that young people are focused on, of course, is economic inclusion as a whole, meaning getting opportunities to actually take part in the economy through employment or even support in relation to young people being able to start their own businesses. I think another thing is, of course, overall, young people wanting to see government and democracy work in relation to service delivery and access to resources. And then, to be very, very honest with you, Bongiwe, the third thing that I think young people are really looking forward to or really wanting to see is accountability across the board. If we don't perform, if we don't do things correctly, how do we hold those who are supposed to be our representatives accountable?
And accountability, quite the big one. So then, in light of what you and I have just discussed tonight, right, what then will be the defining factor as far as the success of these elections is concerned?
I think for me, the defining factor would be service delivery, service delivery, service delivery, accountability, and seeing democracy change. So once we go to the polls on the 4th of November, young people are wanting then to see, and I think all South Africans are wanting to see basic, very important changes to take place. Let's fix the potholes. Let's deal with municipal refuse. Let's deal with corruption. And let's figure out how a municipal budget can actually work for citizens within their particular ward.
Appreciate your time. Thank you for chatting to us. Keamogetswe
Thank
Seipato
you.
from Democracy from Below, a project Lead My Vote Counts, speaking to us about, all things election. And the proclamation has now been made. So the election date set for the 4th of November. A number of issues you've heard as far as the election timetable is concerned. So we'll continue then to keep you posted on this story.